There are shows with psychics.
And there are shows with doctors.
But there's no show like The Psychic and the Doc.
Your practical paranormal power unleashed.
This show synthesizes the talents of world-class medium Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, psychic explorer,
and street smart spiritualist, behavioral psychologist, Dr. Pat Baccili. All subjects are on the table and no topic is taboo. Inspiration, insight,
action, and fun as Mark Anthony connects callers with loved ones in spirit.
In tandem with Dr. Pat's fresh, no-nonsense, street smart, intuitive insights. And she is hilarious.
Extraordinary problems
require extraordinary solutions, which may come from this side
or the other side. This is The Psychic
and the Doc, and it starts now. Welcome, everybody. It is November 16th, which is National Tolerance Day. And the theme of the show on The Psychic and the Doc is, Are You Tolerant? I'm Mark Anthony. I'm the Psychic, and I'm here with my incredible co-host, Dr. Pat Baccili, a world-renowned behavioral psychologist. And let me tell you, talking about tolerance, that is right up Dr. Pat's alley.
Oh, no.
And Dr. Pat, it's amazing that there's actually a National Tolerance Day, and we are living in a time when there is so much intolerance.
Yeah.
I think that is remarkable and not necessarily in a good way.
Mark, let's talk about this. I want to come out of the gate and say, I'm glad we have a national day of this. Why? Well, it's just like any other national day we have. It's a reminder. But I want to ask the question, and of course, we're taking your calls today. It's a live call-in show, 1-800-930-2819. Please call us. Tons of producers ready to take your call. But this is such an important conversation because I think the view of tolerance and our perspective, I think we're evolving. I do think we're evolving. And I say that in a world where it seems like we are at odds with so many things. But I have to go back, and I'm a little bit older than you, Mark, so probably more than a little bit, but I have to go back in a little bit.
39 is not old, Dr. Pat.
But I was watching something about Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah.
And first of all, I can't even believe she's gone. I still can't believe she's gone. But I was watching something, especially with all eyes on the Supreme Court in the United States. And I was watching some of the early, and then I said, oh my God, I was right there with her. Wait a minute. I grew up in this generation. Now, I am not going to say that the generation I grew up with, and you guys are going to email me probably, I don't think we were the most tolerant nation, a decade. I don't think that's true. Now, love and peace, but fighting for tolerance, but not being tolerant, it's almost as if we were living in our own circular motion, where we were asking for more peace, more empathy, more openness. And I often reflect, as I went to my high school reunion again, on have we become more tolerant? And does tolerant, Mark, for you, does tolerance get mixed up with complacency? You see, just because I'm tolerant.
That's a good question.
Go ahead, Mark. That's for you.
No, that's a good question. Does tolerance get mixed up with complacency?
Right?
Ooh. Well, being complacent is like whatever, not caring. So in a sense it does, but by not caring or being complacent, it means you're not taking any action. And God, there was a poem, and I remember it was written in response. It said, they came for my Jewish neighbors, but I didn't say anything because I wasn't Jewish. Then they came for my socialist neighbors, but I didn't say anything because I'm not a socialist. They came for my disabled neighbors, and I didn't say anything because I'm not disabled. They came for my homosexual neighbors, and I didn't say anything because I'm not homosexual. And then they came for me, and there was no one to speak up for me or to stand up for me. And I remember seeing that, and that was
Right.
written in response to Nazi Germany. And, you know, we fought a world war against these racist Nazis, and then American GIs come back to the United States to see segregation, essentially apartheid in this country. And so we're over there fighting these German racists, and then we come back to a country that is heavily segregated. And so we've gone through this tremendous social upheaval in the past 80 years, and now there's still this intolerance.
Well, you know, when we talk about intolerance, I want to talk about this because this is National Tolerance Day. I had to say, well, wait a minute. But this idea of tolerance is so beautiful because, and the reason I ask you about that, Mark, is because I've been in front of panels, I've been at different places throughout my life. And this is one of these conversations that we're not really having enough of these anymore. Just because I believe there is an injustice in the world doesn't equate to the fact that I'm not tolerant. And this is where we get confused. If we take the definition and the meaning of tolerance for this day, it is clear what the meaning is. It is to accept, respect, and appreciate the diversity in the world. Accept, respect, and appreciate the diversity in the world. It doesn't say accept, respect, and appreciate the injustice in the world. It's not what it says. But we can appreciate different perspectives and different things in different places. And I think that this is the message that you and I bring. You know, when you do your work and I do my work, I don't look at the people that come to the front. We don't do it in the show, you know, where we don't screen people and say, oh, you know, blah, 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 don't bring them on. These lines are open for all people,
Right.
and we've gotten calls from different countries. But I remember being given an assignment once by one of my spiritual teachers, and I was a little bit resistant of some things along the way. Okay, I just want to say. And it was by Rumi. And I'll get more into this later on in the show. Beyond ideas of right and wrong, there is a field. I will meet you there. Rumi was a Persian. It's a Persian poem. It's one of the most quoted lines that I could think of when we're talking around tolerance. Beyond ideas of right and wrong, there was a field. I'll meet you there. By a Persian poet. Persia is Iran.
Right.
And I got that poem, and it took me a year to embrace it and stop resisting it and stop being angry at my spiritual mentor. I didn't get it. But I wanted to get it, Mark. I wanted to get it. You know, when I was younger, I was angry. I didn't understand the things in life. I didn't understand my mom's death. I didn't understand my dad's treatment of my sister.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, I had to let go of this. Pink did a tribute song to Sinead O'Connor, who recently passed away. And Sinead O'Connor was highly criticized for an act she did way back on Saturday Night Live. She tore up the Pope's picture. But she did that because of the level of abuse that was going on that nobody was paying attention to back then.
Right.
And what was so interesting about this, when she did her documentary, the Prince Foundation wouldn't allow the song to be played. And Pink sang that song in a tribute to her.
Wow.
And I just thought, where there are those that will have us have not, there are those that will have us be. Let's take a short break. When we come back, Today's show is all about raising the bar for each and every one of us and asking the question, is there a place in our heart where we can allow tolerance in? Still hold the faith and hold the line and the boundaries of injustice, but allow for that moment of tolerance. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, welcome back. You are listening to The Psychic and the Doc, and we are taking your calls for live. Yeah, I know we call them readings, but there's so much more than that. 1-800-930-2819. And Mark's got a story, but I got a little message. You want me to read the Rumi poem. Let me do that, and then Mark's got something very powerful. Yes,
Perfect.
I only pulled a little line out of it. Out beyond ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, there is a field. Yes, you're right. This is the full. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase, each other, doesn't make any sense. That's Rumi. And that's what we're talking about today. I made a comment the other day, and I'd like you to share your story, Mark. I made a comment the other day because somebody was talking about whales, and I said, yeah, they are so far more evolved than us. And they were talking about these whales that were attacking boats.
I love it.
And I said, well, of course they're attacking boats. You know why? Because you're catching their babies in your fish net. And I said, they really are more evolved. They understand what we're doing. They know what we're doing to the sea. It was an interesting conversation. And I said, I see the boater's perspective and I see the whale's perspective. And I hope that we can find a field beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing. Because if we don't come up with a solution for some things, it's going to get messy. Mark, what is your sense of this? Because I know tolerance is important to you.
Well, it is, because I have been on the receiving end of intolerance for most of my life. And, when you have mediumistic ability, it's wonderful. It's a beautiful gift. I thank God every day for it. But there are people that just go insane over it. It's against God, and they start, slinging quotes at me from the Bible. And, if they would read the entire passage instead of just the one line that they yanked out, they would see that, later on in the passage, it does talk about spirit communication in a positive way. And, we look at intolerance, like what's going on with Israel and Gaza right now. It's rooted, certainly hatred, but the hatred is rooted in intolerance for two different groups of people and their belief systems. But let's go further back in time to the late 1940s, when India and Pakistan and Bangladesh were all part of the British Indian Empire. And when the British pulled out and Pakistan and India were created into two separate countries. Now, Gandhi wanted all of them to be unified. He said, we are all children of Mother India. We should be all Indians. The thing is, though, the divisions between Pakistan and India were based on Pakistan was predominantly Muslim, and India predominantly Hindu, although there were millions of Hindus and Muslims on both sides. However, it was horrible. Instead of peaceful, instead of tolerating each other, it broke out into extreme violence. And Gandhi went to the epicenter of the violence, and he went on a hunger strike, and he started starving himself to death. And the Hindus and the Muslims, Indian people, revered him so much. He said, I will die before I will allow this violence to go on. And as he was at the point of starvation, a Hindu man got into where he was, and he said, I'm going to hell. And he said, but you must not. And he threw a piece of bread at Gandhi. He said, eat, and the handlers, Gandhi's handlers were, and Gandhi said, no, why do you think you're going to hell? And he said, my son my little boy was killed in a riot. He was 5 years old. And so I saw a Hindu boy and I smashed his head against the wall and I killed him. And he goes, and I'm so guilt-ridden. I can't believe I did that. I'm going to hell. And Gandhi said to him, there is a way out of hell. He said, find a little boy about 5 years old who is a Muslim and whose parents were killed in the riots, and raise him as your own, but as a Muslim.
Mm.
And that has to be one of the most profound examples of tolerance. It had, the man walked away from that situation just floored, because he was not a murderer, but he resorted to murder because of his grief and his anger. And then when he realized what he did, he was absolutely devastated and convinced that, he was going to go to hell, but then realized there was always redemption. There was always the ability to become tolerant. And although he was a Hindu, now his penance, if you will, was to raise an orphan boy who was a Muslim, but raise him as a Muslim to teach him tolerance. And so much of the world, if they could look at this, when we see the horror of Ukraine and what's going on in Israel, Gaza, and so many people being killed, and it all comes down to, if we realize that we have more in common than we have as differences, if we realize that we love our children more than we hate each other, you've got to be tolerant. Tolerance is difficult because you're intolerant because somebody's different or weird, or you don't understand them. And it gets back to fear, because people are afraid of what they don't understand. And so they demonize it. They're intolerant of it.
Yeah.
So that story with Gandhi, that always...
It's so powerful. It's a powerful story, but I love the solution to it. I grew up as a kid and I was very blessed to have the stepmom I had. I was so blessed. I took me a lot of years to appreciate that. But we grew up with this energy to be out there. I remember going to, it was right after my birthday in 1970. It was in December. My birthday is December 11th. It was 1970. And I remember Gloria Steinem and Kate Millett and a bunch of people down in the Methodist Church in Manhattan. They were doing all this. It was a thing. Now, this is why I'm sharing this, because sometimes we get confused, especially in the women's movement. Sometimes we forget. We think here we are in the women's movement, but the struggle to be all inclusive in the women's movement was a battle. And even when the organizations were being formed, national organization, even, they did not want lesbians in that group. They were not women. And this was, believe it or not, this was the epitome of intolerance. And, and this was so interesting to be part of that as it unfolded. And I'll never forget, and I've interviewed Gloria several times and given her an award, but the one thing I never forgot in her talk, in her speak, in her trying to bring everybody together, she said, we're all lesbians. And she just went out and said it. Like, we're all, and this went on and on and on. And it was part of a separate movement to create tolerance, right? And people think that you don't have to battle within your own group. Like Gandhi.
Yeah.
The battle was within the group.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean the group had to battle. And that's what Gloria and Kate and so many others, Bella Abzug, and I remember that. That thought flashed in. I just brought it up on my screen because I needed to remember the date that was. But I remember how shocked and how relieved all of us were, Mark.
Oh, yeah.
This straight white woman standing up there and Yeah, we're all lesbians. And where do you go from there? Well, where you go from there is
Yeah.
to talk about things, right?
Well,
Um,
on the upside, St. Paul, Minnesota, in the first time in its history, just elected an all-woman city council. And that was all over the news. They're going all-woman in it, and I was laughing at that because it's like, if it'd been an all-male city council, nobody would have mentioned it, but it's an all-female city council, and I think that that's great.
uh,
Um,
but yet at the same time, Mark, right? Let's just give us a little juxtaposition before we go to break. I could not understand what happened to Colin Kaepernick in the football thing. Like, I like what? I still don't understand. Really great football player, and he does something to stand up for himself, and we still haven't gotten over it. There have been many moments in life where it seems like there is intolerance, and we do get confused between tolerance and justice, right?
yeah, we do.
We get confused. But the one message for today from Mark and I, and we'll talk more when we come back from break, find that knock the crust off your heart a little bit. If you just can knock it off, little crust busting on your heart, just knock that thing off a little. And the next time you watch the news, see if you can hold back from snarling. That's all. Just if you could just watching something going on, just hold back a little bit. Try not to get that snarl going on in your face. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back with the psychic and the doc. Welcome back, everybody, to the psychic and the doc. Now, before we go, and we're gonna talk some old school stories here, because Mark and I got a dozen of them. Some of them are pretty funny. I don't think either one of us is saying that we're experts on tolerance. I know I'll speak for myself. I'm a work in progress, but I have gotten to the point lately where I say to myself, look, when that like little news flash comes on, don't snarl. Try not to snarl. Mark, before we keep going, I know you've got a lot of things going on. You're planning a lot of things. We're coming up with the holiday season. This is where people need you more than ever. Give us a little information about what you've got going on.
Well, thank you, Dr. Pat. Please visit my website, afterlifefrequency.com, and sign up for my newsletter, because right after the show tonight, I have a newsletter going out. And facing the holidays in the wake of the loss of a loved one, whether it was in the last year or even the last 10 years, is always tough. And I have on Saturday, December 9th, a Light Circle Spirit Communication event limited to 6 people so that everybody receives an in-depth reading. And spirit communication is extremely healing in the journey through grief. You can also sign up for a one-on-one appointment with me. I believe we have a few appointments still in 2023, but we're booking in 2024. I've got a lot of events, tours going on in 2024, where I'll be speaking on a number of topics and doing spirit communication events. Also, my books, Never Letting Go is a Guide on the Journey Through Grief, Evidence of Eternity introduces a lot of concepts to help people understand the reality of spirit communication and how healing it is. And my latest book, The Afterlife Frequency, which I just overwhelmed at how well it's received. These are ideal gifts for the people that are struggling with loss and that you don't know what to do for them. I mean, you can give people flowers and say, oh, if there's anything I can do, well, this is something you can do, and is give them the gift of healing. So you can find out about all of those things at afterlifefrequency.com. And because next week is Thanksgiving, and Dr. Pat and I will be back next week. I write for Best Holistic Life magazine, and we've had the editor, Jana Short, on. She's awesome. We had Dr. D on recently. She's another executive contributor to Best Holistic Life. And my Thanksgiving article is entitled Thanksgiving and the Mysterious Three Sisters. So the question is Thanksgiving part of an ancient mystery? If you want to find out, visit my website and you can sign up for Best Holistic Life magazine. And, tolerance is such a huge part of everyone's life. No matter who you are, you can go somewhere in the world where you're going to be a minority and people don't like you. All right, I'm a white guy. I'm a white male. People say, well, you're very privileged and you're this and you're that. It's like, yeah, well, they don't know all the struggles I had to go through. And I was in Japan. And here I am in Japan. I'm walking down the street, and I'm 6'1", so I'm fairly tall.
Yeah.
And I'm walking by Japanese people that are terrified of. I remember I was in this music store because I was looking. I wanted to get some cool Japanese CDs and stuff. And I remember I walked out, and there was this guy, and he was quite a bit shorter than I was. This Japanese guy, and he looked at me. And he was he was terrified of me, and I could tell he was just scared of me. And I stepped to the side and I bowed to him, and he went by, and I would walk down the street and women would clutch their purses. And so I was talking to a friend of mine who's African American, and I was telling him that, and he goes, well, now you know what it feels like.
Yeah, boy.
And he said, that's what happens to us all the time. With white women are like, oh, there's a black guy, and they're clutching their purse. It all gets down to tolerance. It's in fact, a good friend of mine, Brian Green, Brian Smith, he is instrumental with helping parents heal. And he put a post up on Facebook, and it said, true Christianity isn't about loving Jesus. It's about loving Judas.
Yeah.
Whoa.
But here we are. Let's break this down. I was watching something on television. Every once in a while, I like to watch Catfish because I'm always fascinated by the decency of humanity and the controversy in humanity. And, when I watch a show on bullying, I'm extremely sad. And at the same time, I'm interested. But the thing that I love is the degree by which tolerance can emerge beautifully, right? Once upon a time in the fashion industry, if you were over 100 pounds, there was something wrong with you.
Oh, yeah.
And now I've watched that industry change. And it's not a matter of being more tolerant, but it is. It's a matter of being more, what did I say? Respected. It's a matter of, right? Because honoring the diversity. Your size should not put you in a category that says you're less than. The color of your skin should not put you in a category that says you're less than. Your religion should not put you in that category. Your sexual preference, orientation, whatever you want to call it, should not put you in that category. And yet, at the same time, we struggle for meaning to figure out, is there a field? Can I get beyond the right doing and wrongdoing? Is there a field for me? It's like the story you opened up with. When all of the different people that you think are going to come and you exclude them from where you are, you do find yourself in solitude. And sometimes your life may be saved by the strangest of bedfellows. We hear this in war. We hear this in car accidents where people will run over to a car and they don't look in the car to say, oh, like, what religion are you? No, they go over to help. This is kind of the place that if we could open our heart to moments of this. But I want to talk to you about something you said, and I really want your take on it. I did a show the other day, and I had a conversation with a few friends, and I said, you know what? I'm not even going to ask you to go to a place of love. I know it's hard. I said, but I guarantee you that if you can practice getting to a place of gratitude for everything, every day, every situation, no other negative energy, attitude, emotion will coexist with it. And they looked at me and they said, you're wrong. I said, no, I'm not. I said, here's the challenge. Try it. And they said to me, how do you know? I said, I tried. When that gift was given to me, I tried so hard to prove that gratitude and fear could coexist on the same plane. They can't, but it takes practice. It
It
takes practice.
does. It does. I had I I used to have this personal trainer he was a forced recon Marine. I mean, this guy, he had like no sense of humor, it was like, and I'd be sitting there struggling to do. I remember he was talking about Marine boot camp, and I go, man, I don't know if I could last a week there. And he looked at me, he goes, week? It was like, the implication was I wouldn't have lasted like the first 10 minutes there. And, but I remember, we were talking about something and about fitness. And I said, and this is really, really hard. And he said, if being fit were easy, everyone would be fit. And think about that. If being spiritual were easy, everyone would be spiritual. If being tolerant were easy, everyone would be tolerant. It's easy to be intolerant because you're giving in to natural inclinations to dislike people who are different than you. The United States is a melting pot. It's not a salad bar, although at times it turns into it. And because I've traveled a lot around the world, I find the diversity fascinating. I'd love when I was in East Asia, and I'd sit and go to Buddhist temples, and I'd sit and talk to the monks that spoke English, and I would talk to them about, what do you think about the afterlife? And they would give me their takes on things. And I remember, and this is probably early to tell this story, but I had a Persian. Okay, you're reading Rumi. I had an Iranian client, and it was right near Christmas. It was a couple of weeks before Christmas, and I had to go deliver some papers to him. I was practicing law at the time. Now, I walked in, and he ran an Oriental rug store. So when you go in, there's no chairs, there's just pillows. And, and when dealing with, and this is tolerance of other cultures, and Americans, I walk in and go, hey, here's your folder, blah, 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 shake your hand, Merry Christmas, blah, 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 and leave. You don't do that with an Iranian. I walk in, and there was some commotion going on in the store with one of his employees. And he looks at me and goes, the lawyer who sees dead people. Come, we must have coffee. We must have baklava. So I knew that, I knew going into this, I was going to be there for at least an hour, hour and a half. And so he's arguing with his African-American assistant. He goes, Christmas is coming. We must have Christmas tree. And the black guy is like, well, I don't believe in that stuff. He goes, well, did you not take Kwanzaa off as a vacation last year? He goes, go buy Christmas tree. And so, and it's like, I'm trying not to, so anyway, we're sitting there, we're drinking really good, Turkish coffee and eating baklava and all this. And about an hour or so later, his employee comes back. And so this black guy comes in with this Christmas tree, and he goes, oh, I got a really good deal on it. And, the owner's like, and where did you buy a Christmas tree? He goes, from Rosenthal's Christmas trees. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. I go, a Muslim sent an atheist to buy a Christian Christmas tree from Jewish people. And I was laughing. And then the owner goes, Christmas, call newspaper. We must run ad. What better Christmas gift than a carpet from the land of the three wise men? And it was hilarious. And so I always think about that, because that was diversity in action. Here were very different people, and even though they were kind of bickering and arguing, they were respectful of each other's beliefs, and it all worked out really great. And talk about synchronicity. When I was driving home from that, I was laughing about this, and there was a DJ on the radio, and he was talking about diversity and tolerance at Christmas, and that's why we have to wish everyone, and I've modified it, a Merry Ramahana Badi Dwali Kwanzmas, because then that way you get everybody's religion in there. Because this time of year, around the winter solstice, you have Christmas, you have Hanukkah. I think Diwali was just going on, the Festival of Light. Badi is a Buddhist festival. Ramadan moves around, but a lot of times, so all the major religions have something going on around the winter solstice. And isn't it more fun? Isn't it more fun if we all respect each other's beliefs. I mean, sitting there eating baklava right after Ramadan, talking about Christmas, making jokes about, the tolerance that was going on in his store. I'll always cherish that. I'll
Oh my
always
gosh.
cherish that.
I love this. I don't know how much you know about me or Linda and our corporate jobs. But we had worked our way up to the corporate ladder, both of us. She was a director in diversity management. And this was at a very interesting time in the evolution of diversity within corporate America. And of course, I was also working for the executive vice president. Diversity was a large part, but Linda was instrumental in so many things. And I was just reflecting on something you said, and these were the times, Mark, where people didn't know, they didn't have a clue. They were so wrapped in with, and yes, this is a thing, people, quotas. There was quotas, and I get asked a lot about this. When I do corporate talks or if I do a talk on diversity, I get asked about this because I was part of that. And I always like to ask the question, would we be as diverse as we are today without them? Could you honestly say that we would have been able to accomplish what we've accomplished in corporate America without them? I said, I don't claim to know the answer to that, but I'd like to know what you think. I mean, don't even answer the question, just explore yourself back and then in a situation and you're ready to hire a couple of people. Who will you hire? And it was such a very controversial thing, right? It was extreme. And every company had a different approach to it. Now, I happened to work for a company where I had a vice president, the head person that designed all of the software still in the phones that you're using today, this gentleman. And he had one of the toughest recruiting jobs on the planet, because back in those days, without that software company, you wouldn't have the phones you have today, not the cell phones either. And he did something so extraordinary, it became so controversial. He paid bonuses for meeting and exceeding those numbers. Now, that sounds so, why? But we have to remember where we've come from, and corporations are so much a part of our capitalistic society today.
Yes, they are. I know we're in
Right?
this storytelling mode, but I remember I was a teenager, and my dad came home from work, and he was he'd gone from being a Navy SEAL to NASA Aerospace to defense contracting, and he was a negotiator. And he said, "Man, we had the toughest negotiation today for the SAMD, surface-to-air missile defense contract, and the U.S. Army's team." He said, we started off negotiating. There was our team. He was working for Martin Marietta, which is now Lockheed Martin. Yeah, in the U.S. Army. And he said there was a black general there, and on a break, one of my team, he made some comment, and I said, "That man is the United States Army general, and if you're prejudiced, I want your blank out of here." My dad was like, "You will show him complete respect." And then Dad said, the negotiations got down to, my dad was the lead negotiator, so now they're in the tit for tat. And he said, "Man, this black general was the smartest guy." He goes, "Sharpest tack in the box. We went at it negotiating for hours, and we got a deal. My dad won the contract for them." He goes, "I'll never forget this man." All right. So about 10 years later, I had just gotten out of law school. I'm living in this apartment. My dad calls me up and he says, "Mark, do you remember when I told you that story about that black general?" I go, "Yeah," and all that. And Gulf War One had just started. He goes, "Turn on the news right now." He goes, "That general's making a speech." It was Colin Powell.
But I mean, these are the things that we have to remember. Linda, I think it was Linda that came up to one of the solutions that I don't think anybody could recognize. Back in the day when people did not know how to bring people together, they tried conferences, workshops, sensitivity training, the whole thing. The solution they came up with was to have a food fair. And so they started to do these food fairs where every organization and people from each culture got to make their food. They gave people time off to create, and I can't remember if it was quarterly or monthly. Now, I grew up in a culture that says food is the way to your heart. It's also the way to your heart doctor. Come from my family. But the heart doctor, doesn't matter. But this thing was subtle to begin with. But as it evolved, people got to know each other. And what happened with that, they turned into different personal relationships. Oh, you live in Bridgewater. Oh, you live there. Oh, you live. Oh, why don't we do something like that in our neighborhood? You see, sometimes the solutions are right in front of us.
Yes.
And sometimes we just forget to see them. And I think we're under the illusion now that tolerance is almost a word that isn't needed anymore. I think that's an illusion for us.
Oh, yeah, it's needed as much now as it has ever been, I think. Hey, we're in the 21st century. I remember being
When
a
did
little
that
kid.
happen?
Yeah, and when we're thinking of the 21st century, you're thinking of, we're gonna have like hovering flying cars and all this, and we're gonna be living in this Star Trekian, or everyone, we don't see color, we see ability and content of character. And it's, in some respects, it's heading that way. I had a protracted discussion with an African American friend of mine. She's a TV host, and she says society has changed. She says from the time she was a girl to now, it has changed. But of course, there's a lot of room for movement and growth. But it does come down to tolerance. This is a multicultural society. There's a movement that's anti against that. You're on the wrong side of history there. It's not realistic. That's like saying we need to go back to separate but equal. That's a done deal. That ship has sailed. That is gone. We have to accept the fact that this is a culture made up of several different people from all types of ethnic backgrounds, races, and et cetera, et cetera. But I really like what you said about food. Food's universal. You start sharing each other's foods because people are like, well, that's really weird looking, until they taste it and they go, huh, that's really good. People say, I hate Arabs. And it's like, yeah, we'll taste some baklava and then tell me what you think. It's like, wow, this is really good. It's like, because when it comes down to it, I've been all over the world. People are essentially the same. I think most people want the same things. They want a neighborhood that's safe to live in. They want a job, a form of income. They don't want to feel threatened. They want their children to feel loved. They want to come home to somebody who cares about them. Okay? Peace, love, food, security. Wow.
And they want the ability to pray to the God of their understanding, regardless, and replace God with whatever you want. But they want to be able to do that safely, openly, freely. And that is going to be our greatest challenge and our greatest opportunity, because you're right about it. Until you actually sit at Seder, until you actually are part of something, until you actually sit around and discover that this particular culture uses one of the most expensive ingredients you can buy to make their rice, saffron. I mean, go try to buy saffron, people. And then you get it, you don't have a clue. You've just now spent $60 on something that looks like a weed, and you can't get the rice to turn out. Why? Because if we learned a little bit more and we paid a little bit more to the nuances, can't we change a bit? Can't we have that moment of gratitude, that moment where we're not snarling, we're not making fun of somebody because maybe they have some beauty painted on their face, or maybe the color of the clothes is so colorful you can't even imagine it.
You know, I saw an old episode of All in the Family
Oh my
recently, and I laughed. And for people who, I mean, I'm sure most of our listeners have heard of the character Archie Bunker. Okay, Archie Bunker was the quintessential bigot. White guy. He had his wife that he called a dingbat. His daughter married this guy of Polish descent. He called him a meathead. And Archie was a bigot. And the thing about All in the Family, it was one of Norman Lear, one of the great talents in television history. And he changed the world through his socially conscious sitcoms. Long story short, Archie is having a medical problem. He's rushed to the hospital, and there is a black doctor from Jamaica there, and he's making racist comments about her, like, well, I want a regular doctor, a real doctor. He goes, I want a Jew to rub, and his doctor's Dr. Shapiro goes, I want this Jew to, operate on me. So all the stereotypes, all this is there. Then they find out Archie has an extremely rare blood type, and the only person they can find that can donate blood is the black Jamaican doctor. And he's looking at her like this, and she goes, oh, don't worry, the blood cells will be compatible. She goes, but when you wake up, you may have a strange craving for watermelon. and I thought that was such a great way to show that, yeah, we may look different on the outside, but on the inside, we're all the same.
I think that show shocked the world, and shocked the world in a good way, and shocked the world in a way that made you think. There were people that said, I'm Archie Bunker. And there were people that said, I'm not. And then there were people that said I could be. Then there were people that said I shouldn't be. And, that show did more to shine a light on humanity than anything. We have a host that's starting, and her show is called The Alchemy of Me. But the tagline for her show is called The Anatomy of Humanity. This is going to be a very, very powerful show, because you see what you and I are talking about. So many people are coming forward to have a voice. Mark, thank you for today. Again, please let folks know how they can get a hold of you. I know you do things special for the holidays, so let everybody know.
Certainly, please visit my website, afterlifefrequency.com. I invite you to sign up for my newsletter. I've got a newsletter going out after the show tonight, because I've got a Light Circle Spirit Communication event online, limited to 6 people. Tickets are going fast. Everyone will get a reading. And let me tell you, I see the healing power of when people are able to be connected to their loved ones in spirit. And, I remember after my mom passed and I was devastated, and I went to a friend of mine who was a medium, and she connected me with my mom. Let me tell you, that did so much for me.
Yeah.
And, people think you're a medium and, oh, it doesn't hurt. Yeah, it does. Okay, we're people too. And so it is my honor to help facilitate connections with people. And everyone, thank you for tuning in. I hope we've given you a lot to think about tonight, and we will be back next week. We got an amazing Thanksgiving show for all of you. That's our Thanksgiving treat for you.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning us in. Sierra, thank you so much. Also to our producers, Rocky, Linda, and everybody behind the scenes, but mostly to all of you. You are the best audience on the planet, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Psychic in the Doc with Mark Anthony and me, Dr. Pat Baccili, right here on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Hey, look, come back next week so we can explore with you more of life's many challenges and learn from fascinating guests. And you know what? Even Mark and me. We'll connect you and discover insights from people in this life and from the afterlife. Extraordinary problems? Yeah, they do. They require extraordinary solutions. But step into the world of possibilities with us on the Psychic and the Doc. That's every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time, right here on TransformationTalkRadio.com. That's TransformationTalkRadio.com. And don't forget, we're also live face-to-face on Facebook.com, Transformation Talk Radio.